fiction, allowing an organic development of the idea while rejecting rigid traditional methods of storytelling, incorporating technology as a critical enhancer of the narrative. Anand Gandhi, not many may know this, but after dropping out from formal education, Anand finished a diploma in philosophy and travelled across India, exploring, meeting people, writing, performing, and attending a series of workshops on subjects varying from Gandhian economics to quantum physics. His foray into writing started at an early age at 12. He started writing and directing school plays. He moved away from a bright television career as a dialogue writer for popular soaps of Indian TV, namely Kyunki Saas Bhi Kabhi Bahu Thi and Kahani Ghar Ghar Ki, for which he also wrote the screenplay. He went on to write and direct highly acclaimed award-winning plays like Sugandhi, which won him the National Award, Pratyancha, Shanotsava, Na and Janashatru. Almost all his works have been produced for the alternative one-act theatre. He has written only one mainstream play, Chal Reverse Ma Jaiye, which won the Transmedia Best Play Award for 2005. His film directorial debut, Right Here, Right Now, achieved substantial critical acclaim. His second film, Continuum, was co-directed with Khushbu Ranka. Ship of Pieces, his first feature-length film, premiered at the 2012 Toronto International Film Festival and has gone on to win several international accolades in various categories, including cinematography, technical excellence, and Best Actress. Critic Derek Nayakam put it on the list of films that changed our lives. Can I invite Anand Gandhi on stage, please?
Morning and missed my session as well with it. So I couldn't come on time earlier, Graham. And thank you so much for coming by. We finished Ship of Theseus in 2012. The last year and a half has been his journey has been very exciting of traveling with the film and. Meanwhile, we started working on a couple of things we were very excited about. So Tumbad is a film that we are working on right now, which should be out very soon. And we decided to engage with the whole ecosystem of motion picture. In a way that we felt has not been done. So right from the kind of narrative that find their way on the motion picture medium, the craft articulation of those ideas and worldviews, and to the way they're positioned, the way they are put out there in the world for to the community to engage with, and the way we engage with the community with a medium like cinema. So we tried to kind of relook at and rephrase that conversation over the last 2 years, and has been a wonderful journey for all of us. We started recycling all our labs with the intention to make films like Ship of Theseus, to make films like Proposition for a Revolution, the documentary that is in production right now, and distribute films like Gulabi Gang, and films essentially that have not found their way into cinema halls for a while. There are lots of intentions. There are lots of battles that we are engaged with. Some of them are very half-baked and superficial engagements. Some of them are engagements where we're putting what we have into it. And we just feel that all the problems confronting our mainstream discourse and our mainstream discourse as informed by motion picture, all the aspects need to be confronted and be engaged with simultaneously. And that's the reason why we are setting up an exhibition platform. We're working on media technology, working on media software. I don't know if some of you heard of this, but we put out TCS. We had many offers. To sell the film after the film did a very decent business at the box office. We had a lot of offers to sell the film for various rights, and we decided that it'll be hypocritical of us to not put the film out for free after having being privileged to have access to open culture for so many years. We have been educated and enlightened by freely available literature and culture out there. It's only fair that we put out our film for free online. So that's what we did a few months ago. We put Ship of Theseus, the entire film out free for legal download, and the response again has been very warm. We made another announcement, and that's something that we've been working on for the last few months. That we'd be putting out about 40 to 50 hours of footage that we shot for making Ship of Theseus free online for people to download, re-edit, and make their own versions of the film and re-upload. So, my got back on me saying, hey, we'd like to participate. We have films flying around that have been pirated anyways. Really, out there some more material out for free if you're going to do something like that. So far we have a few hundred hours that have been committed to the project. And I believe that by the time we go online, we'd have a few thousand hours of free footage that people can use and make their own material out of. So it's a conversation that we're starting in that space of open source cinema. We have dreams for that. We have aspirations for where that can lead, which I can talk about at length. I mean, each project I can talk about at length. I can talk about Ship of Theseus. I can talk about Conversation for the Revolution, Bombard, Newborns. All of these are films and motion picture projects that are incredibly important to us. There are things that we feel need to be articulated. There are ideas we need to be put out there, need to be engaged with immediately. And that's the reason we are doing it. So that was just an overview. At this point, we are a media lab. We are mainly focused on producing motion picture work, fiction and non-fiction, feature length and document, feature length and short and web. Over the next few years, we want to evolve into a proper media lab. So that's where we are at right now. We're called Recyclewala. And at this point, there are 32 people working at Recyclewala. And I feel every morning when I go to my studio, I feel profoundly emotional, and I feel so privileged that a series of events have led us in a place where we have the privilege of working together. We have the privilege of having found each other and having this possibility of making the kind of content we are making and sharing it with the community that we care very much for. So that's just the introduction of what we're doing. And I think I had a lot of ideas that I wanted to share, but it probably would be great if the conversation can be directed by you, and if I can respond to what is relevant to you in context of work right now. Yeah.
Inspiration. Could you tell me about how did you start writing the second story in Ship of Theseus? Because with the history of India, I think it has never been Charvakas or whatever. Has never been appreciated enough, and I saw that is a really beautiful work to come from India. Greatly appreciate that work. Second story. Could you just tell me how it started?
Thank you very much. Ship of Theseus was a film with a lot of agendas, a lot of opinions, a lot of ideas, and a lot of very clear thoughts that I wanted to a lot of worldviews that I felt needed articulation, and all of them also had to be veiled in a narrative form that pretended at least pretended to be and managed to come across as non-didactic. So one of the agendas with each of these, and there were many. One of the agendas was to celebrate film in India. We have and when I say I mean the world. I mean, we know the disclaimer to the conversation, so I'll just jump on we for ease of use. So we have being informed by this immediacy of our geography and the immediacy of the culture found around us. It has been informed by great traditionalism that I felt have kind of managed to go on the fringe of the mainstream discourse. The major traditions are atheist. Buddhism, Jainism, Charvak. There are lots of traditions even within the Vedic framework, the Hindu framework of darshanas. There are lots of darshanas that are also atheist. And for the longest time they have not been number one. Number two, they have not been re-examined and rephrased. At the heart of some of these traditions was the possibility of constant rephrasing. Was the possibility of constant readjustment of the central concept in the world. Using the latest apparatus available, using the latest information and knowledge systems made available. And that has not happened in a very long time. I thought it deserves place in that conversation. I mean, my personal standing is of a complete absence of any need to use most of the conversations in these traditions. I think that we have. I mean, I'm probably saying a few things that need larger disclaimers, but I feel that we have arrived at a place where we have really great apparatus. We have really evolved extremely advanced information and knowledge systems that are not being extrapolated, that are not being interpreted by humanists, by philosophers working in ethics and morality, in politics and in law, to the extent that they should be used. And that is another agenda that the second story perhaps can be smelling on. The third was a very naive, romantic agenda, which was to have extremely intelligent and sharp characters seen in Indian film. That is not to say Indian films have not had sharp, intelligent, well-informed characters. I just wanted to see that there was enough of that, and I just wanted to see a film which would have these conversations. So these were some of the agendas, and there were many more. The conversation about non-violence, compassion, and empathy that is close to my heart. The conversation about free will that I think can really be reworked and rephrased now. And it's not only an exercise in abstraction. It's not only a philosophy classroom exercise. I feel it has a very strong legal implications. It has very strong implications in the way we build our social contracts. So that was the conversation. How our biology informs our choice making. How biology informs the evolution of our various institutions of religion, of law, of all kinds of institutions. The character Maitreya was again an American character. Was a character that was made up of many people. I found very fascinating and very interesting. Of them, one is Abhay Mehta. I had the great privilege and honor of working with this amazing man, Abhay Mehta, when I was 16 years old. And at that point, he was writing the book Power Play. It just come out of the case, the litigation that he was fighting against the Double Project Enron in Maharashtra, and he was a part of this whistleblowing / open opinion journalistic website called altindia.net. And I had this great privilege of working with him because I was graphic designer and a developer when I was 16 years old. So I started working with Abhay Mehta, and I could observe his work, his life, and his thought up close, and that informed a part of Maitreya's character. A part of my character was informed by my own struggle with some of the ideas that he's struggling with, and Charwak is struggling with. Part of the character was informed by Raj Chandra, who I always found very interesting as a person. He was one of the people that Gandhi spoke about as teacher, and I've always found his life very interesting, more than what he did with his ideas. I found his life very interesting. So Raj Chandra was character. Satish Kumar in a way informed the character because of the walking. I felt, and because of the there's a small cue there, a Resurgence magazine coming in the frame. When the doctor hands him a copy of Resurgence, so that was just to give a nod to the work that Satish Kumar has been doing with his magazine and movements that I mean with his partnership with Vijay Vidyan. I mean, so there are lots of characters that inform the character of Maitreya. And the question at the heart of the story of our choices and of our especially our choices that have a direct effect on the rights of the other, on our environment, and our choices that can violate the living rights of the other. Are for me the most important conversation, and has to be had in every possible way using the medium of motion picture. So these were some of the ideas that I found the story.
So just on the topic. I wanted to ask you, like the movie opens with the question, right? The paradox. The movie opens with the paradox itself. So the question of identity and its relation to materiality. So do you have a take on this, or was the film just a space for you to explore the question?
I think at this point in time, I do have a certain view. I am seeing this, and it's a very it's a very formed way of looking at it right now, and it might again dissipate again and reform later on. But at this point, I look at it as in this way that I feel that all contradictions have historically proven to be not contradictions and proven to be continuing. Things that seem to be polarities and things that seem to be polar opposites of each other, held together by a system, have proven in the past to have a very direct relationship and continuum between themselves. And a lot of solutions in the past, philosophical solutions, a lot of applied solutions in the past have come out of synthesis. Have come out of looking at thesis, looking at the entire thesis, and trying to resolve them through a synthesis, through a systems view, through a synergetic view of these principles. And I think the paradox is also an invitation for that to pursue that solution. The paradox of identity, looking at continuity of an entity and the constant discontinuity between one slice in time and space to another is the phrasing of that question. And the moment you dig deeper, it doesn't take too long to start being able to continue between the constant transformation, constantly shifting, constantly changing identity of the entity and the ontological of self that we constantly experience. So, like if you start looking at it biologically, the DNA, the genetic code that informs the cells are constantly changing. Yes, every single cell in your body has been completely replaced over 7 years. But there is genetic continuity. The genetic code that is informing the formation of those cells is continuous. The neurons are not being replaced at the same time. While connectomes are constantly being formed, new connections are being formed between the neurons. So new memories are evolving, and new memories are in turn informing choices. So the moment you start looking at the solution in a holistic way, the synthesis seems very obvious. Sorry. No, the answer is it isn't. And we need to constantly look at the duality of it in its non-duality.
So the film has a kind of thread that a single person, different body parts of in different organs of him are donated to different persons, and you are exploring the
It's like what I said right here. Lawrence was about to tell a story, and I just went straight for the punchline. So okay, but for those of you, there are people who have seen the film. But yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah. So the question is, what came first? I mean, you began with this thread that there is a person whose parts are being donated to different persons. Was that the starting point, or somewhere along the line you saw that this is a possibility that I can braid them all with this thread?
No, that was the starting point. That was the first idea that came to me, and the whole language was generated from there.
Hi, Anand. Just two questions. First question is, while writing the screenplay as an author, what are the things that you focus on? The second question is, from the beginning of the idea to the development till the final script, how much time that ship of Theseus took from you? These two questions.
The total time was 4 years. From the time I decided to write the story comes to you at a time when you're making something else. I was making a continuum when I thought of many stories, and one of the stories I thought about was Ship of Theseus. Was what became Theseus. But right from the time I committed entirely to pursue this as the film that I want to make, to the time I released, to the time of the premiere of the film in Toronto, took 4 years. And what was the first question? Sorry? As an author, what are the things that I focus on? Everything. I just give a glimpse into some of the things that I focus on. Everything that is of any relevance to me. The philosophical framework that I'm positioning the narrative in, the characters, the dramaturgy, the scenes that I'm choosing to articulate the basic ideas, the worldview, the scenes I'm choosing to articulate the worldview of my characters, which I have to work very hard in making them distinct and sometimes contradictory to mine. I work on nuancing it. I work on filling it up in observation and quirks and nuances, so as to fuel the illusion of its realism and naturalism and immediacy. Even when there are chances that in some cases not necessarily extremely real. there are chances that you have met somebody like Maitreya, and it's unlikely that you would in that community, but I have to fill it up with a series of nuances and observations that make that character absolutely immediate and perfect the illusion of that immediacy and that realism. I think in terms of images, I'm working in a motion picture medium, so I constantly think of experiences and the experience that every image will have on the audience. So while writing, I write a lot of the images in it. For example, in the blind story, the image of the mirror brought to her as a long shot, being brought to Alia, and that's an image that gets written into the script at the first draft level itself. So a lot of image making goes into the writing, where of course I constantly reflect my writing. My writing is always in collaboration with Pankaj Kumar, my cinematographer. So he comes on board pretty early on at a very early stage of my writing. When the first idea occurs to me, I call Pankaj and say, "Hey, Pankaj, this might be a direction I might be taking," and then we start talking about it very rigorously. So that kind of gets written into the script itself. A lot of editing gets written into this. A lot of decisions of how the images cluster together to form meaning gets written into the script itself.
When I searched for thesis, I felt it was in conversation almost with the film that came and disappeared, Mithya. Have you seen Mithya?
Sorry?
Have you seen Mithya?
Sorry?
Mithya.
By Rajat Kapoor. No, I haven't seen.
Oh, okay. No, because in some ways, Ship of Thesis externalizes the problem of identity and its future.
Oh, really?
In Mithya, it internalizes it in terms of what happens to the identity of a single person in the same body across time. So the synchronic and diachronic problem. So it was this kind of conversation that was happening, but the question was about, in some ways, Ship of Thesis is a self-consciously philosophical film. Mithya is a popular film, right? But where do you see the future in a way of filmic form, engaging with questions of philosophy, bridging the gap between the two? That was one. The second one was, in the first section of the film, you show a philosophical problem. In the second section, there's a lot more conversation and it's a lot more like, you're telling a problem. Why that choice between the two?
I mean, you've raised a valid question that we have amongst ourselves constantly. The question of whether a piece of cinema can be allowed to be self-conscious. Because when it comes to our cinematographic choices, you would find our cinematographic choices are not self-conscious at all. The way we design images, we work, and the way our actors act, for example, we work towards we aspire to a very high degree of spontaneity. Even though everything is designed, but we within that design we aspire to a very high degree of spontaneity, or the illusion of spontaneity, or the illusion of there being no self-conscious devices at play. So it's only when it comes to the main thing, narrative, the dialogue, the characters, that we have self-aware and self-conscious characters, self-aware writing. And it's a question that we are constantly debating amongst ourselves, and I can give you a list. There are traditions. There is a tradition of filmmaking where filmmakers have engaged with the central concept, the central philosophical paradigm of their film in a very head-on way, like I have. Filmmakers like Tarkovsky, Belatar, not Roy Andersson so much, but Bergman. I mean, Bergman has been very head-on to the point of being out shamelessly didactic so many times. And there are filmmakers, of course, and the same filmmakers have also made that have not engaged with the discourse in a head-on way, in such a self-conscious way, but have kind of allowed the discourse to manifest and be coded within interaction and story. And and invited audiences to deconstruct their meaning and their relationship with the film and deconstruct their and extrapolate philosophical paradigm out of the film if they can find it. So both these traditions are equally valid and equally important. And I think I would be engaging with both the traditions as I go along making films, depending on the kind of story I'm dealing with, and depending on the political agenda that I'm mostly inspired by that moment in time. So the Ship of Thieves is as I said, there were many agendas. One of the agenda was the political agenda of making discourse come back to making philosophical discourse fashionable somehow. Of course, I knew that I'm working with very limited resources, and I'm not going to make a film that's going to be watched by millions and millions of people. But my little way, I wanted to make conversation and philosophical conversation at that, and philosophical articulation a part of our mainstream discourse. So that was a very strong political agenda. And to my friends, I say that I get in charge. I just began. I don't know if you were here when I just began this conversation. I said that there is of course a bit of didactics in the film that has been made carefully to not be caught easily. So I will have. I can argue it out. I can sit down and argue it out shot by shot that there is absolutely no didactics in the film. That the film is completely, the characters are speaking their own language, and that these characters in these situations would be saying those exact things. Of course, the situations are chosen by me, and these are all very active choices and deliberate choices. And I think both traditions have validity. I think the tradition that I'm very excited about participating in, that is the tradition of filmmakers like Kubrick and Kieslowski and the other names that I mentioned. Is that this has not been happening in this part of the world. I feel a huge vacuum of that conversation in this part of the world. We have lots of films that we can extrapolate meaning out of. I have friends who have done their PhDs on completely B-grade crappy cinema and looked at the social symptoms that it's kind of reflecting on looking at it as a manifestation of a certain social context or situation that we find ourselves in, etc. So I find people extrapolate out of complete rubbish. That's possible to do any film. You can take Khuni Haveli and look at the context made in the popular process of the time, and you can do all kinds of bridge building and which has relevance. But I feel that head-on way of engaging with discourse and making your characters sharp and intellectually aware to be able to and articulate to engage with it is missing, and I just want that to happen very badly. So that's the reason.
News media, journalists, everything, the amount of given news media, journalists, and the amount of control, the amount of chokehold that corporates and politicians and all these big wigs have. How important is it for artists, for filmmakers, for photographers, for writers to actually be more political and opinionated and be loud about it? How important is it? It doesn't matter whether you're right or wrong, just to be political. Even in say like popular culture that we see, it could be television, like what Aaron Sorkin does and things like that. How important is that? Like we're losing that obviously because we can't trust our media like news these days.
I think it's absolutely important statement. I was so inspired to hear Lawrence speak today. There were a lot of things that came out in the conversation with Lawrence and I mean these are threads that should all kind of not just leave and we should definitely hold on to the threads that came out of these conversations, the conversation earlier and work very actively towards it. I think it's extremely important to find to at this point to build a community. Extremely important to come together and I mean it's extremely important to put our resources together on the same plateau and start making some of these ideas that commonly we can commonly agree upon to start. I mean, the problem with the problem with our and I'm kind of generalizing. It's not across the board, but it's a problem that I confront on a day-to-day basis with my friends and friends of my friends, which is the inertia of liberalism and of intellectual thought. That we work so hard towards working on the perfect script that we forget the immediate threat at hand. So the immediate threat at hand has come home, and it's right at our door. It has been at our door for a while now, and it's extremely important for us to come together to talk against it, to speak up against it, to put all our resources against it, and not waste. I mean, of course, the conversation has to go on and it has to evolve. So it's very important for our skepticism to survive and for us to be skeptical of each other's ideas as well. But at the same time, not work so hard, not put so many resources at our disposal towards arguing on the fine nuances of solutions and start building the solutions at hand, solutions that are immediate, the low-hanging fruits that Lawrence suggested. We need to absolutely work together. And I'm extremely concerned, as all of us are, about what's going to happen and what's going to happen in the immediate future. We're not even talking about years from now anymore. We're talking about a couple of weeks from now. And I'm extremely concerned, as all of us are, of course. And the only way we can really protect ourselves is to be very active. We do not have the privilege of passive intellectual exploration anymore. We don't have the privilege to be in our caves anymore. We'll have to be on this, unfortunately. I would much rather be in the cave. But we are forced to be out here, and we'll have to come out here. We'll have to articulate. We'll have to come up with very strong counter arguments, very strong counter narratives, very strong disruptive ideas. We'll have to constantly challenge and rebuild and engage very actively. And I always feel very strongly about it. Recycle extremely strongly about it. And that's the reason we have started putting so many of our resources into making the kind of things we are making with this immediacy.
I've got two questions, one technical and one philosophical. So first is that for writing different kinds of screenplay, like for a plot-based film, for satire, for a satire, I mean for a different genres of film, different unstructured, I mean like Ship of Theseus that you were telling about. So kind of unstructured, I mean it's not just a plot-based film, right?
Can you just say it a little? Can you keep the mic?
Yeah. The thing I was telling that for different genres of film, like satire, like plot-based film, or unstructured film, which so different. What is the difference between in the process of script writing and the screenplay? So, and second question I want to ask that. Do you think that you are talking about the continuum and the synthesis? So, do you think that everything is justifiable? Like, everything is justifiable. I mean,
everything is justifiable.
I'm asking you that. So, in the continuum and synthesis that you're talking about, so is that just everything? So that's just.
I mean, the first question really, both the questions are really large. The first question is particularly large about the process of writing various genres of cinema and the kind of structuring and construction that goes behind any of these genres. And I mean, there is a long tradition behind every kind of narrative kind of cinema. But at the same time, when it comes to the medium of cinema itself, it's barely scratch the surface. We've just begin to understand how our biology is kind of has evolved to respond to things that we witness, to images and sound that we perceive. And because we've just begun that, begun to barely scratch the application of that which has been intuitive in the past century, and now beginning to be informed by the influences produced by the sciences we have. So there is a lot that is yet to be done. There are completely new narrative forms that are yet to be invented. There are completely new structures that are going to be invented, and I'm really excited about and I'm just as curious as you are about what they are going to be. The second was whether everything justified an argument like that things are in continuum and everything has a place. Now, no, I don't think everything falls under that space. I mean, we'll have to lay down the assumptions and framework of what we're talking before we kind of refine, rephrase that question. But to give you like a quick example from Jain thought, Anekantavad. Anekantavad is a principle that talks about multidimensionality of truth. It talks about multifacetedness of truth and the possibility of truth being manifesting in contradiction. The possibility of truth manifesting is in polar opposites and creating paradoxes and still being true. While it phrases its philosophical idea in that paradigm, it's also by its very definition, it's called Anekantavad, which means it's a not one-endedness. It's a denial of the thesis that things are one-ended. Similarly, when something like this, something like an idea of a holistic worldview or a synthesis of various worldviews or a synergy of various principles work together is applied in ethics and law and morality. We have this talking about what it's not also. Because it's also talking about what it's not. It is in denial of one-endedness of things. It is also in denial of absolution of things. So actions that manifest in absolute forms can also be denied by this thesis.
We're just taking one last question.
As I see, your film takes so many worldviews from science and philosophy. I was wondering what is the nature of your engagement with science? I mean, I elaborate on it. Your first story of the photographer, it more or less looks like a Mary the neuroscientist experiment to me in some sense. So I want to ask you, there are so many research is being done in neurosciences and cognitive sciences now. Do all those research do they have any implications on your style of expressions, or do you think it's a phenomenal experience and you use film as an art to express it? Or do you consider those things?
My engaged science that is what I would traditionally expect of philosophy. Is to look at information and look at facts and look at data that is produced in lab conditions and interpret that data and make the data usable. So my engagement with science is of that nature. I use the data that is produced by various scientific experiments. I constantly inform myself with things that have an immediate impact on my hypothesis. And especially influences coming from the world of neuroscience and evolutionary biology. I constantly inform myself with the influences that are produced in these two disciplines and try and use these inferences to rephrase my philosophical hypothesis and paradigm and make it applicable in art, in ethics, in morality, in storytelling, in aesthetics, etc. So yeah.
Thanks so much, Anand.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you all of us for joining us. We hope that Litmus is back again in Bangalore soon.
Sorry, guys. Can you guys want to stay by and just quickly see the trailer of Proposition for a Revolution? For those of you who haven't seen it, it's a documentary we are producing. Khushbu Ranka and Vinay Shukla directed this documentary. I mean, they'll give most of the context of the film within the campaign video itself. But please watch it and share it as much as you can. It's sorry. Yeah, very much. It's for Rev, but just search for Proposition for a Revolution, you will find all the links.
Action of the anti-corruption protesters decided to form a political party.
Many of us thought it was a bad idea.
Some even thought it was a great idea.
But we didn't quite know what was happening on ground. All we saw and heard was a clutter of second-hand media opinions and speculations. We felt the urge to see for ourselves what was going on.
Hi, my name is Khushbu.
And I'm Vinay.
In late 2012, we began documenting the journey of this still forming anti-corruption party. They still didn't have a name or media crews trailing them. For an entire year, we followed them through their achievements and failures.
Grassroots campaigns and manifesto sessions.
Media blackouts and sting operations.
To bring you an honest,
neutral,
unbiased,
and hopefully insightful perspective on what we now know as the Aam Aadmi Party.
In our film, you will see faces that we now see splashed across TV screens every day with a proximity and intimacy that has never been seen before.
A lot of people ask us if the film is pro-AP or anti-AP. We believe it's neither. The film doesn't aim to provide definitive answers. It attempts instead to engage in a dialogue. Here's a sneak peek from our film, Proposition for a Revolution.
आज तक बचपन से हम सुनते आए, पढ़ते आए, हमें पढ़ाया गया, घुट्टी पिलाई गई स्कूल में। भारत एक जनतंत्र है, भारत एक जनतंत्र है। हम पूछते थे क्यों जनतंत्र है? कहते थे चुनाव होते हैं इसलिए जनतंत्र है। 10,49,300 चिट्ठियां दिल्ली के लोगों के गुस्से का प्रतीक हैं। सेक्रेटरी साहब से पूछा कि क्या मैडम रिसीव नहीं करेंगी, मैडम नहीं मिलेंगी। उन्होंने बताया कि वो सो रही हैं।
बिजली महंगी है, हमारा ये आंदोलन नहीं, हमारा आंदोलन था कि बिजली के बिल में चोरी।
जब आम आदमी पार्टी की सरकार बनेगी नवंबर में, तो बिजली के दाम दिल्ली के अंदर आधे कर दिए जाएंगे।
have been asking and continue to ask, how realistic are your promises?
जन लोकपाल हर चीज के सवाल में जन लोकपाल, ये एक लेवल आ जाता है जो आदमी इरिटेट हो जाता है उससे।
बिजनेस मतलब क्या? टिकट मिलना राइट नहीं है। जिसको लगता है कि टिकट मिलना राइट है वो आज पार्टी छोड़ दे।
भ्रष्टाचार के विरुद्ध जो महाभारत पिछले 3 साल से देश में चल रहा है वो दूसरे चरण में पहुंच गया है। सबसे नाजुक योद्धा है।
Admit that you're a political party and act like a politician and go ahead and deliver now. पावर ही नहीं है। हम नेता नहीं है, हमें राजनीति नहीं करनी आती, लेकिन हमें मजबूरी में यह पार्टी बनानी पड़ी और अब ये पार्टी बनाई है तो इनकी सरकार को उखाड़ के फेंकेगा ये देश।
पहली बार एक नई आइडियलिस्ट यंग जनरेशन के लोग कह रहे हैं, no, I don't want to shun politics, I want to transform politics. काफी छोटी छोटी बैटल्स में हम जीतेंगे, कई छोटी छोटी बैटल्स में हम हारेंगे, ताकि हम वॉर जीत सकें।